This video is brought to you by Audible. Stick around to the end of the video to find out how you can get a free 30-day trial membership that also helps support this channel. Azrael comes to Gotham City, but be he friend or foe? I'm James Strecker, and in this video we're going to be breaking down every Easter egg from the latest issue of Batman The Adventures Continue, the new DC Animated Universe comic from Batman the Animated Series legends Paul Dini, Alan Burnett, and Ty Templeton. And let us know in the comments below if we missed anything along the way. Real quick, there's a little red rectangle down there that says subsidize or Sanskrit or something. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but legend says if you click it will bring good fortune to you and your family for generations. Correction, speedrun! Now, there's really only one thing we messed up last time, and that's our list of Tim Drake's DCAU interactions with the Joker. As many of you have pointed out, in addition to the comics and episode that I mentioned, Robin also exchanged witty banter with the Clown Prince of Crime in the Static Shock crossover episode The Big Leagues, and barely shared a single shot with the guy in TNBA's Beware the Creeper (Jack Ryder). There, I said him. It doesn't even affect the point I was trying to make before. Page 1? Yeah, we're actually talking about the cover for once. This one's drawn by Image Comics artist James Herron. Great name. Besides how gorgeous this thing looks, it's got notably similar striking imagery to that of the cover of Volume 1 of his original comic series Rumble, published in 2015. They both look cool, and that's all I have to say about it. Page 2! The title of this story arc, The Darker Knight, is the same as the title of a short story in the UK-only I Love to Read Batman magazine from 1996. A treasure trove of lost DCAU tales that we've actually been posting HD scans of the last few weeks, which you can find through our social media at DCAU Watchtower. This story from issue number 17 features an evil Batman copycat, aka a weirdly dressed wannabe, who defends and aids criminals instead of the other way around, until he's ultimately and extremely quickly defeated by Batman. Page 3! This layout of Batman and Catwoman leaping across the Gotham skyline is pretty similar to the cover of Gotham Adventures number 50 by Darwin Cook, and also similar to this page from Batman Hush. In terms of their surroundings, we get a very close but not quite the same gargoyle as the one in issue number 6, and a very close but not quite the same billboard as the one in issue number 1.
It's not quite the same.
And 3 things about Catwoman. 1, where the heck is her whip? 2, she's got way more highlights on her costume than normal, which is something of a trend in this comic. And 3, she still has her bluish-white face skin from the new Batman Adventures, despite her having normal flesh tones the last time we saw her in Batman Adventures Volume 2. This was also the case in Gotham Adventures, something artist Tim Levins has mentioned to us before was actually a mistake, meaning the way we see it on the show is the proper skin tone, which doesn't really make any sense because she takes off the mask and there's no blue skin, so why would there be blue skin? Page 4! Though it happens often, TNBA Batman chasing TNBA Catwoman, who he even mentions is good at the chase, is of course gonna remind me of the animated short Chase Me, which was included as a special feature on the Mystery of the Batwoman release in 2003. Chase Me was on the Batwoman DVD. The Batwoman movie dealt with Casnia. Does this crown belong to Queen Audrey? Wait, no, this comic isn't in Justice League Season 2 after all, so Audrey isn't even queen yet. But it does look a little bit like the crown of Tikal, an artifact in Paxton Powers' possession in the Batman Beyond episode King's Ransom, which, if the same crown, needs to make its way to Mexico City by the 2030s. Oh, and the battering. No, James? Bad, James. You made a vow.
Have you kept your vow?
So far.
Page 5. Batman mentions Jason has been following him around for the last few weeks, which tells us there are definitely time gaps between each story arc of this series. But how long of gaps? Gonna have to wait for that timeline video after this thing is done. That big, steamy abomination of a timeline video. And in swoops Azrael, in basically a hooded version of his costume from the action figure line that ties in with this comic. It's essentially a combination of how we first saw him in Batman's Sword of Azrael in 1992, and his more Batman-ish costume in 1993's Knightfall. Supposedly, we are getting a red variant of this blue Azrael figure.
Actually, I will tell you that we have painted a red variant of this figure, so that is not announced anywhere except right now.
Whoa!
Now, I don't know when it's coming out, but we did actually make one.
The weird thing about his look here, though, it's much more well, phantasm-y than the original Azrael. As we see in closer views on the next few pages, he's got that skull-like, presumably metallic mouthpiece, as opposed to the more spiky, feather-like look of the 92 version. We've also been jokingly comparing his look to that of the Reaper, Iron Man, Drix. Wait, we haven't seen Jason put on the red hood helmet yet, and Azrael here has a red hood.
I'm Hush LOL.
Page 6. Azrael's gauntlets originally ejected big scythe-like blades, but since we don't see those at all here, I'm just going to assume that the DCAU version's gauntlets shoot those puffy foam disc things from the 90s. He does have a sword though, which is right out of that Sword of Azrael book. In the CW Lucifer show, based on the Neil Gaiman Sandman character of the same name, the Blade of Death, a flaming sword, was wielded by the Angel of Death, Azrael, and was capable of completely eradicating whomever it killed, aka they wouldn't go to heaven or hell, they would just not be anymore. The sword's design is, as predicted, almost identical to Slade's sword from the last few issues, though Slade's seemed to be more energy-based with all the Kirby crackle, and this one is just straight fire. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're not both Hephaestus swords. It would even go right along with that whole Blade of Death concept. Maybe there are several of these swords. A fiery one, an apocalypsy one, maybe the next one will be Red Sun energy to kill Superman, or maybe the Sword of Superman from 1984, or just like a big bright flashlight sword or something.
When you can light up a 700,000 watt candle.
Page 7. Oh, there goes the Warner Brothers water tower. Now where will the Animaniacs live? Page 8. The silhouetted Batman face as he swings across the rooftops reminds me of this specific frame from the TNBA episode Holiday Nights. Yeah, I said frame. What did you expect? Page 9! So they're the Bat Gang now? Damn, just when we'd canonized Bat Family. Azrael says he's from Dumas, or Dumas, which my immature middle schooler brain constantly reads as dumbass, and now so will yours. I'm from Saint Dumbass. Where's the shawl? In DC Comics, the Order of Saint Dumas is a Catholic military order, a division of the Knights Templar that took part in the Crusades. And thanks to our Patreon supporter Tron Travolta for pointing out how Azrael threatening to take Catwoman's eye could be a clue that he was the one in this universe to take Slade's eye. Azrael versus Deathstroke flashback, please! Page 10! It's interesting that Batman compares Azrael to Slade regarding his speed and not his big flaming sword? Who will be the next villain to show up with a sword that's on fire? Firefly already had one in the cartoon. Azrael calls Batman his brother, and though we'll find out why a few pages from now, it may be worth noting that Batman's actual brother, in the New 52, was Thomas Wayne Jr., who was the primary Talon adversary in the Court of Owls storyline, eventually revealing himself and taking the name Owlman. The Owlman from the crime syndicate of Earth 3 is also named Thomas Wayne Jr., who has a Robin-like sidekick named Talon. And while we don't know if this applies to the James Woods voiced character from the Crisis on Two Earths animated movie, it's worth keeping in mind. Page 11. I believe you is also the phrase uttered by Batman right before he shoots KG Beast's flamethrower tank at the end of the warehouse sequence in Batman v Superman.
Wakanda forever!
Page 12. Azrael's mask doesn't have nose filters for the gas, but it would if it was an exact copy of Phantasm's. Jeez, what's even the point of being an angel of death if you're not gonna go full ham?
Your angel of death awaits.
Page 13. You always were the trickster. Oh, you silly. That's not the trickster, that's Batman.
You always were
The trickster.
Mr. Bronsky.
Got me again, Flash.
Azrael totally has the speed force here, and his jump through the fence is pretty comparable to Batman's window smash from Chapter 4, which we'd previously compared to other Ty Templeton Batman art. Page 14. The Shawl of Madeline, described in the issue's solicitation, is in fact the Shawl of Magdalene, likely named after Mary Magdalene, a disciple of Jesus who was present at his crucifixion. There's probably more about her that would be interesting to make note of, but I don't know Bible stuff. I didn't watch no vegetable stories. Magdalene is also the name of a Wonder Woman-esque Marvel Comics character, a member of the Avengers on Earth 9201. The shawl is said to have healing properties, powers of resurrection, according to the solicitation. We guessed last video that maybe Cobra hired Azrael to steal the shawl to help revive Firefly, but Azrael seems to be on a mission from Saint Dumbass, so perhaps Cobra has already stolen it, and Azrael is on a mission to get it back. I guess, like with everything, we'll just have to wait and see. Yay, page 15. Though we've had instances of Greek gods, African gods, Norse gods, new gods, and even Lovecraftian gods in the DCAU, the vengeful god that watches over St. Dumas is just plain old Hebrew god. The phrase Batman uses potentially referencing passages from Jonathan Edwards' famous 1741 sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, which warns he is not only able to cast wicked men into hell, but he can most easily do it.
And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger.
And nice use of whom, Batman?
I believe I heard something about that when I attended grammar school.
Oh, page 16. Bullock eating a donut has got to be another Critters reference, and hang on, he's got his new Batman Adventures character model now. He had his design from BTAS in #1. Did Ty catch on that he should be using TNBA models after that whole Mad Hatter thing? Wait a second, is this supposed to be Renee Montoya? Why is she in her officer's uniform? She should be a detective by this point. God damn it. Why is this my life? Okay, listen. She's had uniform continuity issues like this before. She was a beat cop all throughout the animated series until an assumed off-screen promotion gave her this outfit we saw her wear in A Bullet for Bullock, Trial, Time Out of Joint, and Make 'em Laugh, the latter of which we've hypothesized may be happening at the same time as two other BTAS episodes, Riddler's Reform and Shadow of the Bat, where we see Montoya in her normal cop uniform. On top of that, she's also back to her old uniform for the later episode House and Garden and the Sub-Zero movie. Then she's full-on detective mode activated for the entirety of the new Batman adventures. Even with those problems aside, if this comic is taking place after or at the tail end of TNBA, did Renee get demoted or something? Well, not if the Gotham Girls web series has anything to say about it, set during Justice League, where she's also a detective. So, I don't know what to tell you. P.S. This is the funniest moment from the comic so far.
How strange to see you.
Mask of the Phantasm, Friday, December 1st at 5, only Toonami.
Who are you?
You're the great detective. Figure it out.
Page 17. Since when has the trophy room area of the Batcave been elevated like this? It was always on ground level whenever we saw it in Batman Beyond or Justice League, or even in the opening of Over the Edge. This big glass elevator in the middle of everything is also a bit different than how we've seen it before in BTAS. Batman must be redecorating. I wish I could see what's behind this speech bubble though. Maybe the steamy ground hole from Chapter 2? And which Batwing is that? It doesn't have the bat ear spikes from the TNBA one, and it doesn't really look like the one from BTAS either. It almost looks like the back of the Bat boat, but why would that be up on a loft? Is it Roxy Rocket's rocket painted black? Huh? Azrael reveals himself, Jean-Paul Valley, who appears reasonably older than we usually see the character. In DC's Contagion event from 1996, Catwoman remarks that she thinks Azrael is a kid, i.e. more Dick Grayson aged than Bruce Wayne aged. So, like with Slade, or a good number of DCAU characters before him, we're getting a tweaked interpretation for Azrael's origin. Also, he kinda looks like Thomas Blake, the Fabio-like Catman from Batman and Robin Adventures number 16, which was written by Ty Templeton. The phrase "win in Rome" here was also said by Alfred to Bruce in the Batman-Superman crossover World's Finest, and Azrael says he based his costume on Batman's to be effectively imposing. With the suit's similarity to Phantasm's, could Jean-Paul have made the armor a few years back, based off news footage of Phantasm that he accidentally thought was Batman? You know, like basically everyone else in that movie?
It's the Bat!
Last issue we speculated that Avenging Angel was foreshadowing for Azrael, but here he wonders what the dumbass clerics would have named Bruce Wayne. If we consider the Angel of Vengeance aspect to be applicable to all of the Order's agents, perhaps Bruce could have been named Akrata, alias of Andrea Rojas, who shares a real name with the Angel of Vengeance character from Smallville. Or Raguel, the Jewish Angel of Justice.
But Azzy, what will vengeance solve?
Page 18! The reason why Batman and Azrael are roughly the same age here is because Jean-Paul's origin now places him as training alongside Bruce during his years prepping to become Batman. This expands our list of known Batman trainers, which previously included Zatara the Magician, Yoru Sensei in Japan, the Master in Nanda Parbat, and Zabur el-Shaitan, a sword master mentioned in the Batman Adventures number 17 that Ra's al Ghul speculates Batman must have learned from. This is all within a rather short span of time. As Bruce leaves Gotham at age 18, somewhere around 1979 to 1981, then he's back in Gotham for the Phantasm flashbacks by 1983. That's like 4 years maximum for him to learn all of that stuff, as well as whenever/wherever he studied science, as seen in Batman Adventures Volume 2, Number 1. Not to mention,
When I studied with Zatara the magician, he taught me about ventriloquism and voice throwing.
because he's Batman, I guess. Azrael, buddy, how are you planning to type anything on that keyboard with those big old gloves?
The fingers you have used to dial are too fat.
Page 90. Is this supposed to be Jesus on the shawl? It bears a resemblance to the infamous Shroud of Turin, which is believed by many to picture Christ, but you'd think they'd just call it that if it was that. Batman preferring a physician over mystical healing could be a reference to Dr. Leslie Tompkins. And Batman and Alfred creating the new Azrael armor is now the second most forced toy integration of the comics so far. As we'll see in a couple pages, this new armor is pretty much a new helmet, some scallops. Yes, these are called scallops, don't ask me why. And blue paint over the red he was already wearing. Man, Batman be tinkering with new armor a lot lately. What's he gonna make next? Huh, Monica? Huh? Page 20. The Penguin finally shows up after his tease on the billboard in Chapter 1. Does this mean we can expect every character tease to eventually pay off? Farmer Brown appearance when? Penguin working with Catwoman gives me some definite Batman Returns feels. And if he's still running the Iceberg Lounge, does this mean his campaign for mayor of Gotham, as seen in Batman Adventures Volume 2, hasn't started yet? Since this is something we know would probably need to be already in motion. But Penguin doesn't seem to be the type of person to give up his business just for the sake of his political aspirations. The lounge management and mayoral campaign don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Look at me, I'm Jimmy Carter.
Though it looks a little different here, the building on the left of the Iceberg Lounge was actually revealed in the Justice League Unlimited episode This Little Piggy to be the Natural History Museum, which very well may be the same as the Gotham Museum of Natural History, where we've pegged the entomology and ancient and/or giant reptile pavilions to be located from issues 4 and 5 of this series. The building seen in the JLU episode is even advertising the dinosaur exhibit on its outside walls. If all true, that means the Iceberg Lounge is also on K Street, near Morrison, and is potentially this tiny chunk of building we can see under Batman's speech bubble in number 5. It is possible, since we're theoretically 3 or so years before This Little Piggy, that the museum moved locations, and only eventually became situated next to the Iceberg Lounge. But I prefer imagining that when Sunny Firefly blew a big hole in it a couple issues ago, Penguin just waddled outside like, "What? What the hell is all this?" Batman's actual cousin in the New 52 was Kate Kane, Batwoman, Kane being the maiden name of Bruce's mother, Martha.
Why did you say that now?
Though the character of Batwoman appeared in her own self-titled DCAU film, she wasn't Kate Kane. That version didn't appear in any DCAU-style media until 2019, in fact, in The Amazing Adventures of Batman, The Terrible Twos, a capstone children's novel based on the world of the new Batman adventures. This book series probably isn't canon, but I'm not gonna say Kate Kane Batwoman doesn't exist in the DCAU, because then she'll get introduced a year later. It's tradition after all. Page 21. Penguin refers to criminal transactions, which we've seen take place in the back room of the Iceberg Lounge in the episode Judgment Day. And is that an owl painting on the wall? Is this Court of Owls foreshadowing? It's juxtaposed with court. And we did get that Batman's brother thing earlier. Talon will even be in the Adventures Continue action figure line eventually. Makes you think. But if the owl painting is a hint toward things to come, then based on the bird art from last page, I think we can also definitely expect Batman v Fruit Loops. Page 22. Yeah.
This motherfucker just walk into the room already screaming his goddamn head off like he's just as surprised to see Batman and Azrael as they are to see him.
This Mr. Wing monster is a brand new creature thing. Is he a spliced henchman? A spliced Rudolph Bumble? Mr. Wing. Still not Nightwing, but we're getting closer. Penguin also calls him his Wingman, which in the comics was the name of a 1950s hero who was part of the Batmen of All Nations, and who hailed from Sweden. Wingman was also eventually an alias of Jason Todd, when he was part of Batman Incorporated, and Willis Todd, Jason's father. Not that the Penguin couldn't easily change up his office layout, or even have multiple offices, but this room is decidedly different than the one we see Batwoman confront him in several years down the timeline. And finally, at the bottom here, the next issue's tease contains the phrase "Birds of a Feather," which was a Penguin episode of Batman the Animated Series. And there's no, There's no timeline stuff to talk about this time, at least not enough to dedicate to an entire section of the video. Wow, so that's what happiness feels like. Before I get to my final thoughts on the issue and predictions for the future, I'd like to direct you over to several days from now, James, who wants to tell you a little bit about today's sponsor. Thanks several days ago, James. I'll be quick. You've been watching this video for like 20 minutes. You just want to move on with your day. I get it. But when this video is over, what's your plan? You gonna watch Parks and Rec again for the 400th time? Scroll through Twitter until you get so depressed that you want to take a bath, but oops, you didn't pay the water bill, so I guess you're not doing that. You can't even do something as simple as take a bath anymore. What has happened to your life? How about an audiobook? Specifically, the new Audible original adaptation of Neil Gaiman's Sandman. This is something I'm personally really excited about because it's basically gonna be the best dramatic reading of a comic book since Kevin Conroy forgot how to turn his live stream off.
I'm still alive.
Besides being narrated by Neil Gaiman himself, it's packed with a star-studded cast that I cannot wait to let enter my ear holes, including X-Men's James McAvoy as Morpheus, Star Wars' Riz Ahmed as the Corinthian, Thor's Kat Dennings as Death, Kingsman's Taron Egerton as John Constantine, Lord of the Rings' Andy Serkis as the Raven, and even Michael Sheen as Lucifer. You know Michael Sheen, he was in Twilight or something, right? Oh, you know Michael Sheen. And like 60 other voices for characters, including John Jones? John Jones is in this? And Dr. Destiny? Okay, before I was just advertising so you would get the Audible trial through us, but now I really want to listen to this. So head over to audibletrial.com/Watchtower Database to get a free 30-day trial membership, which includes access to a ton of awesome audiobooks you'll also probably be interested in. This Sandman one comes out July 15th, so even if you start your free trial today, you'll still have plenty of time to listen to it when it comes out. Or just hop on it the day it does come out. You can still use audibletrial.com/Watchtower Database to do so. You have to actually type it in. I can't just leave the link below because it doesn't work if you click it. I don't really know why, just you have to type audibletrial.com/Watchtower Database. It only takes a little bit of effort for a whole month of joy, and we get a little kickback at no extra cost to you whatsoever. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to take an air bath. Back to me. Thanks, me. Conclusion! They just keep knocking them out of the park, man. Despite our pickiness, the complete package that will eventually be a Batman The Adventures Continue trade paperback. Catwoman did feel a little rushed in and out this issue, but at least she got more screen time than Annie, who was also featured on one of the covers. But if Catwoman comes back, they better not talk about You Scratch My Back, or the timeline will actually implode. I guess Batman's cape destruction wasn't a Justice League Batsuit lead-in after all, thank vengeful God. And Monica's coloring just keeps getting better and better. Don't get me wrong, it was never bad, but the skies, the shading, the textures, the feathers on Big Bird is so good. I seriously have so much fun just looking at this comic. In terms of the story going forward, do all these bird references mean we will actually get Nightwing next issue? And or is the potential Court of Owls tease going to involve the Owls versus Cobra? Birds and snakes don't tend to like each other very much. We find out toward the end that the Shawl of Magdalene was sold to an anonymous buyer, so with its resurrection powers, I wouldn't be surprised if the shawl was in the hands of Ra's al Ghul. Last we saw Ra's on the timeline, the Lazarus Pits were no longer able to sustain his perpetual rejuvenation, so he resorted to stealing life essence from Superman in the episode The Demon Reborn. In the end, the good guys won, and Ra's and his daughter Talia disappeared, and as far as we know, didn't show back up until Batman Adventures Volume 2, where the Pits work on Ra's again. So maybe the shawl will be the missing link? And speaking of that series, something unfortunately tells me that Jason Todd's Red Hood origin will have absolutely nothing to do with the Red Hood we saw at the end of Volume 2, number 8. We're never getting a follow-up to that, are we? Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We could not do what we do without all the selfless support of everyone you see on this big old list, including our newest patrons, Preston's World and Campbell J. Parker. Thank you. If you'd like to toss us some of your coffee money every month, you can go to patreon.com/DCAU Watchtower, where we've got all sorts of exclusive goodies to fill your Catwoman crown sack. Oh no, that didn't sound right at all. You can hang out with us on monthly video calls. You can get artwork drawn by this guy. You can get the heartwarming knowledge that you're doing your part to keep the Watchtower from plummeting to Earth in some sort of fiery Hawk-related disaster. And of course, a personal shout out to Dark Poet 1792, Robert Sterling, Daniel Chan, Aaron Young, Luke Mears, Cameo Shadowness, David Gallagher, Richard Mon 12, and Mac for giving us Way too much money. You're all so awesome. Before I go, I do want to mention, you may have noticed the brand new cover art on our channel and social media. It's full of our favorite WDB memes that have developed over the years. But do you know all of them? If you would like to win a signed print of this artwork, send us an email at contest@watchtowerdatabase.com with your list of every character and reference we tossed into this thing. The first to get closest to all of them by the next The Adventures Continue video wins. And P.S. the signatures will be digital because we can't all get together right now for obvious reasons, but it's still pretty cool. Make sure to hit that, oh, it says subscribe! YouTube's been bugging out in a lot of people the last couple weeks for subscriber numbers. We just lost about 100 for seemingly no reason. So double check that you're still subscribed, or subscribe in the first place if you haven't already. We put a ton of work into these videos. While we do have fun doing so, it makes it all worth it to see that number keep ticking up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you for the next issue, where Mr. Wing gets to put the star on top of the tree.